Welcome to the Making of Me podcast, where we explore the mind of experts whose challenge us, inspired us, and help us live better life. Today we are joined by Mylena Sutton, also known as the Leadership Fanatic. Mylena is a consultant or growth coach and storyteller who specializes in helping leaders and individuals tackle the tough conversations they have been avoiding. She's the creator of the host of the Leadership Drive podcast, where she travels across the country to uncover the personal stories that shape how people lead. Her work sits in with intersection of accountability, self-awareness, and human behavior. Leland believes that honesty, even when uncomfortable, is the starting point for real growth. For real growth, she's here to share insights on leadership, goal setting, psychological safety, leadership, and how our personal stories shape the way we lead. Leland, it's a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. So, Malena, what were some of the challenges and choices that shape you into who you become today?
When I think about my life and the work that I do now, if you know my personal story well, you can easily see how they are intertwined. There are a couple of things that I think most of us don't realize that we do. We spend a lifetime, for some of us at least, trying to grow out of what we grew up in. And with respect to that, I look at my family story, and it's a very delicate way of talking about how the challenges of my life have shaped me as a person, because what you have to worry about, particularly when your story sometimes overlaps with family, is trying to figure out how to preserve and respect the fact that you love those people, that those people aren't malicious in their intent. So that's one particular challenge. But on the other side of that, what you're also looking at is this is how growing up in that particular family culture under those circumstances affected me and how I see it now that I'm an adult. Yeah. So with that in mind, there are a couple of challenges that I see as key in terms of helping to shape who I am today. As a matter of fact, I would put them in three boxes. First and foremost, I grew up in the American South. I grew up in Georgia. I grew up with my grandmother. One of the things that's really interesting, my grandmother was born in 1944. And just looking at our family culture around poverty and racism, that had a significant effect on how I lived. Then, in addition to looking at growing up with a grandmother who dealt with those challenges herself, then looking at this other part, and that has to do with addiction issues. Looking at several people in my family who have struggled with addiction to various substances as well as alcohol, and looking at how that has affected my life. And then last but not least, there's this interesting nuance. Even though my family had all of those challenges, there was one thing that I knew if I knew nothing else. I was loved, and the expectations that I would live my life working toward becoming productive was a non-negotiable. So you have these tensions in place. You have poverty and racism, you have addiction, but you better make something out of yourself. You better do better. And I grew up with those three things in play. And that has really shaped my life. In particular, my work as well as my volunteer activities really reflect this duty, if you will. My grandmother used to praise me for being smart. And I notice what I've done in terms of my work. I've chosen work that allows me to be smart. I'm a consultant, I'm a facilitator, I volunteer as a tour guide in a couple of different museums. I do things that let me feel smart. And I see that forward throughout my life. I absolutely see it.
Wow, amazing. This is a whole lot of things that just the way you make reference of growing up, a whole lot of them, poverty and racism and addiction, a whole lot of them interplay. Even despite in that particular condition, you are loved and you are supported. Yeah, a whole lot of things. I think there's a whole lot of things to actually learn from that. Yeah, apart from just looking like you're thinking about growing out of it, but still in it, there's still a whole lot you have to kind of learn and actually carry that on. And that was really amazing. So you often talk about the role of truth in personal and professional growth. Why do so many people actually more like avoid facing the truth about themselves or their workplace?
Easy. I think it's kind of easy. I think the truth is not black and white oftentimes. And so the way I would frame it is this. I think what we like to do as people, I think we like to play victim or villain. This happened to me, or this person is the villain. But really and truly, life is much more nuanced than that. You may have been a victim, But you play the villain sometimes too. Nothing is 100%. So let me give you an example. I told somebody the other day. I said, if you are not responsible for any of the bad things that happen to you, you also aren't responsible for any of the good things either. That means you are
Yeah.
just a victim of the way the wind blows and happenstance. The reason we don't deal with those challenges is because if we are really to be honest with ourselves, that nothing is purely this is what somebody's doing to me. We
Yeah.
play a little bit on both sides. Like to give you an example, one of the things that I look at often when I went to college, life was tough financially and otherwise. Yeah, okay, great. I didn't have everything that I needed. You might argue who does.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, while that was true, I also made some bad decisions during that time in my life. Whether or not I had everything I needed to prevent those decisions is a separate issue from the fact that I did exercise some agency, some choice within that. And so I think what happens with people in life as well as at work, we have to deal with the fact that we are both, sometimes we are, what's that expression? Sometimes we are the one with the bat hitting the ball, and sometimes we wear the catcher's mitt. We are not just in one space. Like I have a client who has an employee on her team, and she talks about how this employee is the absolute worst. Okay, great. But as I've been working on coaching her, I'm like, as her boss, let's talk about the role that you have played with this employee being the worst. Because she's worked for you for years. That in and
Yeah.
of itself says, as a leader, where are some of the gaps that you have? Oh, you haven't been addressing these performance issues. You haven't been addressing these behavior issues. And now you are mad. You have had it up to here. You are in part responsible for some of this behavior because you let it go on for so long. And not only did
Mm.
you let it go on for so long, but you said nothing. You absolutely said nothing. So if you look at it in the workplace, you have situations like that. Whenever conflict is afoot, I can almost promise you that in most cases you have one person who simply avoids. And that doesn't mean that you aren't responsible. It just means that you aren't avoiding. I mean, that you are avoiding.
Yeah.
In our personal lives, we do the same thing. We have things that we don't want to deal with. Like, I think about people in situations with respect to health in their marriage. I think about this a lot with the women clients that I deal with. I want to lose weight. I want to get healthier. But my husband, my partner, they aren't supportive. Oh, they aren't supportive. But both of you are eating the pizza and the burgers. I mean, did you say anything? Did you have a discussion? Did you make it clear? Look, you can eat the pizza and the burgers, but my blood pressure is high. My diabetes is not controlled. I can't do those things. But often, when we look at why we don't say anything, is because nothing is pure. I am not always the villain, and the victim, and
Yeah.
sometimes the villain. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. I think the fact that some persons just have avoid truth is the fact that they just want to take responsibility from, yeah, because more like taking or speaking the truth. Let's make reference of the burger issue you just make reference of, admitting the fact that they were the one who actually more like they bought it, and even if the husband didn't more like make the mandatory that yeah you have to eat the burger, they actually more like willingly more like take the burger and actually get to eat. So then just blaming the husband like he did it is the fact that they have already taken responsibility. And it seems at various age, people just want to kind of avoid taking responsibility and at the end of the day blame the outcome on
Mhm.
someone else. And that's a whole lot. So in your coaching, you actually encourage people to examine whether their goals are truly compelling.
Mhm.
What pattern do you actually see when people pursue goals they they don't genuinely care about?
And I think most of us choose goals that are, on one hand, so lofty that we're just
Yeah.
throwing stuff out there. I want to do, I don't know, I want to become a runway model, and I am not healthy. I don't work out. I don't do any of those things. And I think what happens, we talk about things we would like to do. But there's a difference between admiring something, thinking highly of something, and setting that as a goal for yourself. For example, one of my favorite writers, she's now passed away, her name is Toni Morrison. I love the way she writes. Whenever I had gone to see her before she passed away, she made me want to be this elegant writer and this speaker. I felt very encouraged and motivated. I am not a writer. I am not one. What happens, I think, oftentimes we see people who have these gifts and talents. We see things that we like, and we go, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is other than simply wanting my ego to be stroked, I don't know if I want to do all of the research, the
Yeah.
homework. One of the things that she said in a talk that she gave, she talked about like how every morning she was up like at 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, like super early, and that she writes for several hours every day.
Ooh.
Ego is going to let me get up and write 4 or 5 hours every day. And I think that's one of the problems with us. I think we see things that we
Yeah.
admire, we see things that are lovely, but we then err when we decide to adopt those particular
Yeah.
goals or desires as personal ones. I think in order to make a goal compelling, what we really have to do is look at it honestly. Why do I want this particular goal? How does it support my overall life? Not, oh my God, I just love this skill in someone else. And I think that's what I mean when I say we don't choose compelling goals, because if there was something that you wanted to do that you could tie it to how your overall life worked, it's a lot easier to go, I feel overwhelmed, but I'm going to keep chipping away at it. But if you choose goals that are not attached to things that really matter to you, then it's really hard to set aside the time, the money, the energy, the sacrifices to actually get there. And here's one other part too. I think, and I don't know about other cultures, I've only lived in America, but I think we have this thing here where people feel like they have to have a laundry list of things they want to do. And you're just like, what if there were just 1 or 2 or 3 things that you wanted to focus on and excel in, but you got this list of 30 things that you want to do and you do nothing because that's too much. And so
Yeah.
yeah, it is, we choose things based on what we admire, not things that we really want to do.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. I think they just speak volume. Yeah, that's asking those critical questions that, yeah, why do I admire this particular trait? And yeah, I think just reading it and knowing what work it takes to actually more like get there, I think that put balance. So are you willing to take it? Are you willing to put in the work? Are you willing to put in all it takes to actually more like being that every quality we get to see in there, it's because someone put in the work, they take the responsibility and they show up regardless. Even when tough time and everything, and just knowing what work demand, I think that is enough to actually put balance. So setting goals and what is acquirable by individuals. And yeah, that's really amazing.
What does it take?
Yeah, yeah. So you have actually more like driven across all 24 states to interview guests for your podcast, the Leadership Drive. So what lessons about leadership and human behavior have this road trip taught you?
In terms of my own behavior, it has taught me that I need to be a better planner. It's like, wait a minute, you get in the car and you set out and you drive far, you just like, I left this at home, I did this, I did that. Just a really funny story before I answer this. So a couple years ago, I decided to set out on this road trip. I was gone for about 6 weeks. And I live in New Jersey, which is like the Northeast, and I decided to go south. So on my way south, I had packed all of these winter clothes. And when I got halfway through Mississippi, I think I was like, there's too much stuff in my car. I have too much stuff. And I was packing up a box of things to ship back home because I had just way too much winter gear. It was much warmer. So I'm packing up my car and I'm literally in this parking lot packing up my car. And there's this sweet lady. She comes up to me. She says, friend. I was like, what do you mean? Long story short, she was like, you have on flip-flops and shorts. You're in the middle of a parking lot with a ton of stuff in your car. I just want to make sure you aren't destitute and that if you're hungry, we can feed you. I mean, she was totally concerned. I was like, no, I'm fine. I'm on a road trip with too much junk in my car. I got to clean out. But
Yeah.
totally impressed by how thoughtful she was. I mean, you can tell she did not want to offend me. Friend, are you okay? One of the things that I have learned on these road trips, I find that a lot of times people choose, I think there are 2 things with respect to the things that people choose to do for careers. I think in many cases, people somehow just kind of stumble and land somewhere. I think a lot of times people aren't as intentional about their career choices as we like to think that they are. I think sometimes they happen to stumble upon opportunities that they really excel in and they stay there. It's not because they initially started off with passion for that thing. They landed in a spot and that passion grew.
Yeah.
And so I think that happens a lot. And we don't talk about that often enough when we ask people, what do you want to do with your life? Sometimes we don't know. We figure it out when we get somewhere. We are in a space where we see the need for whatever it is that's taking place, and we stay there. We develop a kindred spirit with those people in that space. And then
Yeah.
I met some people whose life stories are a function of how they were deeply affected by
Mm.
experiences. There's this one guy who I interviewed. I drove all the way to Arkansas to interview him. And he said something that I thought was just, it's still impactful for me now. I tell the story a lot. He said he grew up in not the wealthiest of families, but pretty well off, stable. And he said his family lived in a rural area and they had a farm that was almost kind of like a family compound. And on that huge piece of property, they had several houses, and that's where they lived as a family. And he said the beauty of that for him was this. He said he has known his entire life that no matter what he does, he's never going to be destitute. He's never going to.
Good.
He said, do you know how you can build your life differently when you know no matter what risk you take, you're never going to be destitute and you're never going to starve? And he does work now where he worked, and he says, and I looked at his entire career, he's always worked in sectors where he helps with housing because he has come to the conclusion through his work, if you can help people have access to safe, affordable housing, you give them access, at least in part, to knowing that no matter what other risks they take, they will be okay. And he's like, imagine what our world could be like if we could get people to a place where they knew they could take risks with their lives, with their careers, and they were still going to be able to eat, and they were still going to have a place to sleep. And I'm like, wow, just a powerful way to think about how the world could be if everybody had access to the same level of privilege that you have had.
Yeah, amazing. I'm just more like thinking about what motivation is going to come from that particular perspective, being that, yeah, you are reaching out from the place of comfort, you are reaching out from the place of safety, having a particular, you have a home, you have everything. Even if you are taking skill, taking risk from that end is going to be from the fact that, yes, I know at the end of the day, I have a home to return to, I have a place to return to. And that's really comforting and really energizing to put in your all. And yeah, it's really amazing.
It really is. I mean, just think about that. I mean, I don't know how many of us know what it's like to have the kind of family and financial stability so that you can try
Yeah.
anything and it's going to be okay. Even if it's not successful, you can feel free to take that risk, learn from it, whatever it is you
Yeah.
learn from it, but you are going to be okay. Just think about how liberating
Yeah.
that is. That changes your whole approach to setting goals. I mean, I think it's so powerful.
Yeah, it is actually. So lastly, okay. So lastly, how do you define integrity as consistency across certain circumstances? How does this definition shape your approach to coaching and consulting?
Actually, the one thing I would say that I have to be careful about, because if I could force all of my coaching clients to adopt this philosophy, I would. I kind of push it on them. For me, when I talk about integrity, I refer to it sometimes as a through line. If you say something is a value for you, that value should be a constant. So let's just
Mm.
make it a situation. Let's make it simple. So let's say one of my values is that I absolutely hate the color green. That's a value for me. Always hate the color green then. I hate it at your house. I hate it at my house. I hate it at work. I hate it at church. I hate the color green. But then one day I hang out with some friends and I find a situation wherein suddenly I like the color green. I need to be able to explain to myself. I need to be able to articulate what happened such that I have hated the color green all this time and now suddenly I love the color green. And I think what we don't do enough in terms of our values is investigate what happens when there's something that we say is very important to us is somehow undermined or contradicted. What has happened such that you suddenly love the color green when you said before that you hated it? Now, if you take that same example and instead of saying, I love the color green, you say something like, I have a commitment to being honest in all of my relationships, even when the other person might feel harmed by what I have to say. You know what? Now suddenly, when you have this disagreement with your partner, and now you're gonna go from just having the emotional explosion to having the conversation where you explain why. And you make this commitment no matter what space I'm in my life, I'm going to have integrity around how I deal with conflict or problems. And I'm going to, instead of shutting down or blowing up, I commit that I'm always going to talk through it. I'm going to explain. We don't necessarily have to talk through the issue in the moment, because when you're upset and you're emotional, having a
Yeah.
rational discussion with somebody who's angry, that's not going to work. But it's the reason that I'm upset. The reason that I'm angry is X, Y. And at the end of the day, even if it's hard for you to hear, I am still going to tell you so that you aren't trying to fix a problem or help me address a problem in a way that you're really unable to deal with it or at a disadvantage, because I've never given you the gift of honesty about what the actual issue is. And then you take that not only in your personal life, where the consequences can be very different than what they might be in your professional life, and you maintain that same commitment. I'm having an issue at my job. I don't like how my coworker treats me. I don't like how my boss treats me. I'm going to maintain that same commitment to honesty during conflict, and I'm going to explain to them what my issue is, what it is that I'm seeing taking place. I'm going to ask questions. Yeah, I realize that my boss has more power than I do in this particular context. Is honesty through conflict always important, or is it important only when it's convenient for me? And
Yeah.
that's what I mean when
Amazing.
I talk about integrity. If you have a goal, if you have a value, is it that it's something that you kind of like and you subscribe to whenever possible? Or is it something that guides your life and your choices? And if so, you need to be clear that in order to have that kind of integrity, there needs to be an always, not a sometimes, but something you adhere to, that you honor always.
Yeah. That's will be something you adhere always, not sometimes. Amazing. Also, for my audience who wants to learn more from your work and reach out for you for consulting and yeah, connect with you and hear more from you, how can they reach out and where is the best platform?
Sure. Go to my website directly. My website is my name, MylenaSutton.com. And if you get to my website, you will find three things when you get there. You will find my leadership consulting work, you will find my life coaching work, and then you will also find access to my podcast there. So if you go to my website, MylenaSutton.com, it takes you to all of the things.
And thank you so much, Milena, for sharing your experience, wisdom, and story with us today. For listener, just the way she said out, the link is going to be on the show notes for you to actually more like dive and learn more about our work. Yeah, thank you so much for the load of insight you actually share, and not just sharing it, with the energy with which you share. It was really amazing. I enjoy every bit of the conversation. It's really a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation. Thank you.